So some tips and pointers to make sure that, you get your campaign approved the first time. And that's important for a number of reasons. One is right now there is an industry backup as far as these aggregators approving your campaign, which is ultimately what gets your numbers registered. But what you don't want to do is, compound that issue by submitting a campaign, waiting 10 days or 5 weeks, only to find out you got a rejection. And then you got to figure out how to resolve the rejection. And then there's not a lot of clarity there, only to resubmit it again to wait another 5 weeks. And that is definitely not a good thing for anybody and anyone in this ecosystem. So getting it right the first time and having a partner, a cloud communication partner that can give you the right information and clear and be able to work with you is super important to make sure you get it right the first time. Also, there is now basically a $15 vetting fee for most providers today. So each time you submit a campaign, they charge a $15. This is not to hire your score. That's a separate type of vetting. But there is a $15 vetting fee just to submit your campaign, to have it reviewed by DCA, by an aggregator. And so if you get a campaign rejected and then you resubmit that very same campaign again, that would be another $15. You would end up paying $30. And each time it gets resubmitted, it's another $15, unfortunately. So you want to make sure, again, besides the timing of it, that you get it right. Now, these are general items, and I'll pick some out here. Obviously, there's nuances to every single business and setup. And so that's another reason you want to be partnered with a provider that can guide you properly on your specifics of your setup here. So don't take anything that I say to the bank here, because there could be nuances here, and there are, and sometimes there are exceptions to certain situations, and it all depends on context here. But just to highlight here, so just when you're registering a brand, a couple of things to keep in mind. So there's a very basic level check that the Campaign Registry does. It's very simple. They just take the tax ID that was given and the business name, and they check with the government entity to make sure that that matches. And if it matches, then you become what's called a verified brand. And if it does not match, you're not going to become verified. And if you're not verified, you can't create a campaign, hence you can't send text messages. So that is literally the only check they do at this point. They just simply check. So if it's the IRS, they want to make sure the legal company name you gave and the tax ID you gave is exactly what's on file with the IRS. If it is, it will be verified. If not, you're going to have to resubmit it. And maybe you might have to contact the registry or your provider to contact the registry to help clarify what that is. But that is one of the big reasons that you want to make sure you're doing that right. Second, it wasn't always the case, but it now is when you create a brand, you need to put a website there. A couple of points here. Number one is there must be a website, because the assumption is if this is a legitimate business, there is a separate thing called a sole prop, whole separate discussion. But if you're a regular legitimate brand and company in the year 2023, you're an online-based business, basically using the cloud, there should be a valid business today has a website. And if you don't have a website and you're communicating with customers, that's a very big red flag. And so the assumption is if you're a legitimate business, you should have a legitimate website. And it's not just some holder place. It's not some landing page. It's not some page that's under construction. It's not some web page that when you go to it looks like it's spammy and there's some security issues. Those are all reasons where a campaign can be rejected by DCA, and they do reject for that. But you are required to put in a website, and that website actually should match the brand. So if you're going to create a campaign under this brand that you're going to put this website on, the website logo should match the brand that's going to be the campaign that's going to be using it. That use case should match the brand. If it's, for instance, if the brand is some shoe brand, but the website is about some hats, obviously there's two different companies. We'll make it even further outside of it. One has to do with a restaurant. The brand is for some restaurant, and then the campaign is about selling shoes, right? So there's nothing to do with each other. So the idea is the website, the name of the brand and the website that's listed under the brand should be matching the campaigns that are eventually going to be created under that brand. That is another area that DCA looks at. And if things don't match up, that can cause rejection as well. And that's on the brand side of things. And I will point out probably the biggest issue of late that we see come across the board is this call to action section. And so basically, I'll just give a brief high level, and then I'll talk a little bit about a nuance here and why some folks might be experiencing some or seeing some interesting things here. So this call to action section, that's when you create a campaign, it wasn't always there. It just used to be that you would just hit, do I collect opt-in, which is required and mandatory explicitly, and you would just hit yes, and that's it, you were good to go. But that wasn't working, and many folks were just clicking yes, just to click yes, and weren't getting opt-ins. And so over time, DCA got wind of that, and they still saw opt-out rates. So they further wanted to verify or create a process to further verify that when you say you're getting opt-ins, you truly, and your brand is truly getting opt-ins. So what they did is they added this section to campaigns called call to action. Okay, you say that your brand is getting explicit opt-ins from its end users, from its customers. Well, where and exactly at what point in time and how are they getting the opt-ins? And so this field that was added is required for you on behalf of your brand to put in very specifically at which point in time and where is this explicit opt-in being obtained from that end user. Is it at the doctor's appointment? Is it through some online booking system? Is it over the phone? And so that's what that section is. So initially that was all they looked at. They wanted to see, is this section filled out and how are you getting the opt-in? As time went on, that still wasn't good enough because folks would just put in or make up, hey, I'm just getting it over the phone. I'm just getting it verbally when they show up in person. Okay, well, what proof do you have? And then again, they started still seeing opt-outs when folks started to see that description. So it led down this path of even further, kind of further verification. And what's happening now is, as I mentioned under the brand, is that you are now required to put up a website. So even if you say in this call to action section that, I don't know, I'm running a spa, and when folks come in, that's when I get the opt-in verbally. Let's just say that's true. And you say it's not given on the website. Well, what's going to happen is DCA is going to go to the website. They go to every single brand's website, every single one, and they will look at that website. If there's any form on that website that mandatorily requires you to collect a phone number and there's no opt-in language, you're going to get a rejection. Regardless if you say that in that call to action section, we do not get opt-ins from that website at all, that is regardless, because the point is that you do have an opt-in area. There is somewhere that numbers are being collected, that's somewhere related to this brand where opt-in is not being collected. And therefore that negates the trust in your setup and situation. Well, you do have some area that I noticed that you aren't collecting this. So unless you remove that number requirement from that form, removed the number itself, so you don't have to enter it at all or make it optional, or add opt-in to that, you are likely going to get a rejection. I will give a tip. We'll call this the tip of the day for anyone wondering here as a favor to everyone joining here today. So I want to point out something here. So while today, at least for the post future, DCAs are literally manually checking every single campaign and every single website. And that's part of the reason why there is a delay. While that is true, that's regardless of any provider you're using, by the way. Everything is now manually being checked one by one by one. Here's a little tip for you. And I'm not saying to deviate from that. This is talking about being compliant. But if you were to, so they go to this website while this campaign is being vet, while it's pending. Once a campaign becomes DCA approved, that doesn't mean active, that doesn't mean registered. Those are other statuses, and we could talk about what those are. But for your campaign to become registered, there's a section called DCA approval. That stands for Direct Connect Aggregator Approval. Until that turns into yes, your campaign is not considered registered. Once your campaign is DCA yes and registered, you could technically change up everything back on that website. You could take off the form while they're reviewing your campaign. The second it becomes approved, add it right back. They will never, ever look at that website again, ever. Even if you have an opt-out, if your opt-out rates start to grow, they'll just potentially suspend your campaign or ask you to approve opt-in, but they will never look at that website again. So the point is, it's a one-time deal, set it and forget it. So if you have a way to manipulate something on that site, if you wanted, and it's still within something we'll call kosher category, and then put it back for convenience, they only look at the website one time. Once that campaign is approved, that will never be looked at ever again. And those are just some pointers here that I'll point out as of late here. Again, there's a lot of nuance here. And as things roll out, you should partner up with a partner that is well versed on the detail here to be able to help you along and make sure you get approved with minimal delay.